Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Fire Commissioners. Date is September 5th. Time is about 9:05. Roll call.
Let the record reflect Commissioners Ibarra, Glazier, Hara, Nimberg, and Woods Gray are present, and we have a quorum. Madam President.
Thank you. Flag salute, moment of silence.
Please stand right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of past and present members of the Los Angeles Fire Department who devoted their lives to the protection of our community. Thank you.
So we start with Commissioner comments.
I'll go then. I'm sure we're going to hear all about the Latuna fire, but prior to that, actually, I had the pleasure of riding the bandwagon for the Nisei Week Parade. I am Nisei, so I'm second-generation Japanese American. So, along with Chief Fligo, and actually I brought my granddaughter and my son. And in addition, actually, retired Chief Yamahata was there. And so it's kind of nice to see his whole family.
That's great.
Very cool. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, yeah, school. I just want to commend the department for their heroic efforts this last weekend in doing such a tremendous job with the Latuna Canyon fire. While it's tragic that 4 structures were lost and a couple minor injuries, it is amazing also that was the extent of the damage. So thank you all so much, and thank you to all the other departments that were working in unison with the LAFD to fight that fire. So thank you. And I was fortunate enough to go down to 112s. I want to thank the members at 112s and Chief Villanueva and Chief Palacios. I rode out on Boat 2, which is great, and it was really great. I got to see the command post for Fleet Week and how they run using all these separate departments, and I got rave reviews about the LAFD and their participation, and I want to thank you all for that. That was going on along with, with everything else that is happening. So this department is incredible. So I was very proud to be a part of it, and I want to thank you all for your efforts. Oh, and the Women's Breakfast, I don't know if you guys know about the Women's Breakfast, is the LAFD Fire Foundation is on September 15th. So that is coming up, everyone, and we will be honoring women who have broken the glass ceiling in this department. One of the recipients is, I don't know, is it public?
No.
Yeah. No? Oh. Yes. Well, we'll find out on the 15th. You have to show up. All right, thanks.
Don't ruin the surprise. Yeah. I had a chance to go and check out firsthand the response to the brush fire over the weekend. It was truly impressive to see everybody working together out there. And I was able to get into some of the areas that were threatened, and to see our folks in action, particularly all of our water dropping, our air assets, as they're known. When you see them all kind of come in one after another, you see their worth in terms of the firefighting. So that is money that is well spent. Both on those Erickson Sky Cranes, which are super impressive when they're dumping their 2,600 gallons of water at a pop, and all of our regular helicopters, regularly scheduled helicopters. That is. But yeah, it was a great effort, and so I too was really proud of our department and how everybody came together, and also the whole city family. Everybody was working together really well out there. Also want to acknowledge that when we do have instance of that magnitude, we do see our members who are held back across different parts of the city. I think that happened where we had folks who had to stay over on their shifts, and although the main incident gets a lot of that attention, I also want to recognize the commitment of everybody in our department who stays back and continues to staff all of our regular apparatus to ensure that the rest of the city continues to be served, because it's still people don't stop having heart attacks and having their regular structure fires, unfortunately, while we have that main thing going. So it is all the more impressive to see us maintain regular operations while we handle an incident of that magnitude. And of course, we could not do it without our mutual aid partners, who I saw all out there from as far away as Camp Pendleton down south and Encinitas, and folks up north and parts east. So a big thank you to all of them as well.
Moving on to report to the fire chief.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to echo the comments of the commissioners about the Latuna Canyon fire. I'll give you some basic facts. I just got that information at 7:30 this morning. We're now at 70% containment. It was 30% yesterday. Our acres are 7,194 acres. So that's fresh off the press. Now, with regard to our people, they did an amazing job, as the commissioner just said. Not only did we have the fire, we have our normal operations. Because of high temperatures, Dr. Eckstein informed me that we transported over 700 people over the weekend each day, and our norm is a little over 600. On top of that, we had the USC football game, which was a huge patient generator because of the heat and the number of people there. On top of that, we had Fleet Week, and I didn't hear any issues over there. We did hold the off-going platoon members for 2 shifts. Tremendous dedication to the mission. This is Labor Day weekend, and I'm sure they had family events planned, and some people came in from as far away as Arizona, command staff and others, to come to work. And they asked, where can I help? It was all hands on deck. They did an amazing job. We did lose 4 houses, which is a tragedy. And but in relation to the scope of the fire, it really was an incredible job. I flew the flyer on Saturday morning. I saw engine companies deployed in all of those housing areas, protecting homes. On Sunday, we drove the perimeter. I ran into an Orange County strike team on the south side of the fire, actively protecting homes. They were in the backyard, running from yard to yard, and our helicopter simultaneously were making water drops, and not one house was lost in that subdivision. So, and then on the north side of the fire, I was in 74th first in. I was talking to the strike team members there, and this was day 3 of the event, and our firefighters were tired. You could tell they hadn't had sleep in many, many hours, but they were dedicated to the mission. They wanted to stay until the very last house was protected. So I can't say enough great things about our people. I'm truly proud of everything that happened this weekend, not only the fire, but also the normal operations. And it is a true honor to be associated with this board and the people of this department, serving our great mayor, Mayor Garcetti. That was the first thing, and that was a big thing to share with you. The other thing I want to share is that our USAR group, that's another thing that was going on in Texas. We got word this morning they're going to be demobbed. They will be arriving back home either Friday or Saturday, and we're developing perhaps some sort of event. We'll put out a press release, let everybody know that our people, our heroes, are coming back from Texas. The third thing I want to share with you is an amazing story having to do with Dr. Eckstein. Last Monday, he was working his normal shift at County USC Hospital, and he was deployed to Alhambra as a member of the HURT team, which stands for Hospital Emergency Response Team. And I'd been told a couple years ago that didn't exist anymore, but I found out through Dr. Eckstein that's not true. But he was called to an industrial accident in Alhambra. Urban search and rescue from those jurisdictions were there. And there was a worker who was in a silo of some sort with black coal with a huge auger in it. The worker was inside of this, and then somebody accidentally or mistakenly hit the on switch, entrapping this worker. Dr. Eckstein and his HURT team peers responded to the location. They assessed the situation, and Dr. Eckstein was forced to amputate both legs above the knees. Tragic event that he lost his legs. He saved his life. He saved his life, and I saw a picture with Dr. Eckstein and the patient in the hospital bed a few days later. He's going to live. The courage, the skill, the composure that takes is amazing, and we're truly fortunate to have him as our medical director and in charge of our EMS bureau. So very proud of Dr. Eckstein. He's a humble man. He probably wouldn't share it, but I want everybody to know what a great thing he did, and we're very, very proud of you, Dr. Eckstein. Thank you very much. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Now, a verbal report by the department on incidents from August 15th to September.
We have I figured we would concentrate on 3 things I shared, and we'll skip right to consent if you're, actually presentations.
So, and that covers the medical director too? Right?
Yes, yes.
So, presentations.
Captain Ignatzik, he's going to handle that part.
Good morning, Board of Fire Commissioners, Fire Chief, City Attorney's Office, and everyone present today. My name is John Ignatzik. I'm a captain in Homeland Security, and my job is disaster preparedness. I work with Captain Chris Wynn as the CERT captain, and today we're here to present us one of our volunteers. Unfortunately, that is going to be leaving our department and our CERT program. Today I'm here to speak about Paul Shively. If you can please raise your hand. Thank you. Paul Shively, valuable asset to the Valley Bureau as our Valley Bureau coordinator. He started his volunteerism in Indiana as an EMT in 1974 as a paid volunteer emergency worker. He served from there, moved to Los Angeles, served with Assemblyman Blumenfield in disaster committees, 2 terms with Woodland Hills and Canoga Park neighborhood councils. He worked as a Red Cross PIO and an emergency medical responder. He works in ICS with the Rose Parade. He's joined the LAFD program in early 2000, where he served as a Battalion 17 coordinator. As soon as the department reorganized, he was identified as a Valley Bureau coordinator, aligning himself with our LAFD organization. Major incidents that he's volunteered at were Cessnon, brush fires, Porter Ranch, Catalina Island. He's been a call-out volunteer ever since then. He's worked in firefighter rehab, wires down incidents, adverse weather days. He's also served as IC for the H1N1 points of distribution when we had those vaccinations at 2 different events. He's also participated as an IC during our anthrax drills with LA County Health, and he's coordinated and assisted us with multiple disaster drills. Personally, I've spent a lot of time with him. I've taken him to breakfast for our appreciation with Captain Wynn. We've met his family through good times and bad. He's a very good person. He's opened his house as a foster home for many children. And the list goes on and on. He's self-employed. He has his own business as well on the side in the legal business with Paul Shively and Associates. And wrapping him up, he's a selfless individual, concerning, forward-thinking, and unfortunately, he had notified us that he's going to be leaving the program for personal issues and for focusing on the family. They're going to be moving out of state, and he's had a working relationship with Chief Richmond at the Valley Bureau and with Captain Wynn and myself. So it hurts us to see him leave, but we wanted to recognize him for his countless number of hours over these many years, minimum of 11 years with the CERT program, but beyond with the city. Lives in the city in Porter Ranch, and he's always been a great Angelino and and helper for the LAFD CERT program. So we'd like to present him with this letter of appreciation, a certificate of appreciation from the Los Angeles Fire Department, and it reads, Paul Shively, Operations Valley Bureau Coordinator, in recognition with sincere gratitude for your dedicated 11 years of service to the fire department, for your contributions as an LAFD member, LAFD Community Emergency Response Team as the Valley Bureau Coordinator for the past 2 years. Your response and support during various types of emergency incidents has contributed to the LAFD being able to deliver exceptional service to our citizens. Los Angeles Fire Department commends you and extends our appreciation for your initiative, positive attitude, and outstanding support to our sworn members and the citizens of Los Angeles, presented this 5th day of September. Chief.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Paul.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you for allowing me to take part.
Oh, our pleasure. I'll say a few words. Would you like to say a few words after me?
Sure.
Paul is, I've never personally met Paul. I've heard a lot of great stories about Paul. This past weekend, we had countless CERT volunteers at the command post at Hanson Dam. I think they exemplify the type of people that we're looking for and the type of person that Paul is. Selfless, willing to dedicate whatever is necessary to get the mission done, and they did. They were outstanding. We had one CERT volunteer, actually, they had a fainting episode, and we had to transport them. So it is not without risk. They're doing fine. Everybody's doing fine. So, Paul, congratulations. Thank you for your 11 years of service to the LAFD. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Congratulations.
Just want to thank the many members of the department that have supported the CERT team as it's evolved from where it began many, many years ago to a support unit, a paraprofessional support unit of the department. There are so many other things in store for the unit, but I'm glad to have taken part in the evolution as it's gone to this point, and I'm ready now to hand it over to the younger folk to take it from there. Thank you.
My name's Captain Chris Wynn. I've had the pleasure of working with Paul on numerous occasions, numerous call-outs. As Chief was mentioning, this weekend we had quite a response out to the brush fire, and all I could think about all weekend was that Paul wasn't there. He's an amazing individual. When it comes to selflessness, he exemplifies what citizens of Los Angeles are. As a lifetime resident and citizen myself, I'd love to have a neighbor like Paul. On any given day, no matter day or night, I could call on Paul, and I knew he would support the program. I knew he knew exactly what to do, and on numerous occasions, he assisted the department in supporting firefighters at call-outs, middle of the night hydration runs, wires down calls where he would release resources from having to sit on calls for umpteen hours waiting for DWP to get there. I can't even begin to tell you what an asset he is to this program, to this city, and to myself personally. So I just want to say thank you, Paul, and we're really going to miss you at the CERT program.
We have consent agenda items.
Okay, move to adopt items 4A through G. Adopt the recommendations, that is.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So then, our first regular agenda item, we're going to take out of order. So we're going to start with 5D, which is report by the department on the unmanned aerial system policy. So this is the second time you're hearing this.
Good morning.
Morning.
So since this is the second time we're hearing this, can you just talk about the changes that you made? Because we requested that you confer with ACLU.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, let's just talk about the changes.
Okay. So primarily the changes that were made, and I can go over the pages that they appear on.
Okay.
Since our last meeting, if you want to start from the beginning with your copies, we added language to the policy that more clearly defined the operational sets that we would use the UAS in, so that it was more specific, not exclusionary or all-inclusive, but more specific for the major incident types that we plan on using them. We also defined on page 3 that the number of total incidents that we could possibly use the UAS in are very small in comparison to our annual response package, which last year's numbers were just over 470,000. If you move on to page 5, when it talked about under our policy guidelines, there was some ambiguity about when and how we would manage the UAS, when and how we would record, under what scenarios, and then under what scenarios we would keep that information. It wasn't clear on, we weren't clear on how we would manage our chain of custody and how we would own that information to make sure that we were doing everything possible to protect public interest while serving the department. And we added that language there on page 5 to clearly define how we would and would not use the information, who we would and would not share it with as well. And that language has been added into the policy. On page on page 10, under our security policy, we included more robust language that talked about our chain of custody and the retention of that information and how fast we would make that available to the securing entity. We also made some changes, and I'll just skip forward for a moment. One of the more important things, specifically directed by you and the board, was that we clearly defined how our independent assessor should be used. And that, although in the specific language in the copy that you have, that's the last amendment that we're going to make. If you refer to the independent assessor right now, the language says that the board's independent assessor or other named designee will serve the role if so directed by the board. However, according to the authority of the charter and staying consistent with that, they don't have to be, the independent assessor does not have to be directed to do that. So she or that designee can review any of it at any time, since they have that role of assessing our program. So that was the major change to our oversight. I have to acknowledge the board in your foresight in speaking to the ACLU. Our policy is much stronger. It's much more robust. The language is much clearer. I believe that it is far more encompassing of what our intent is, far more encompassing of what we're able to do and accomplish with the UAS, while again providing for the protection of the people who call for our services, while providing for the protection of citizens who may be concerned about its use. We added some language throughout. No revisions to the document other than what was recommended. We again talked to the ACLU several times, and we continue to talk to our partners in the fire service. And Chief, we are today in the lead. I'll guarantee you that. Departments are reaching out to us on a daily basis because of our process, because of how thorough we've been up to this point. And I have to say that although I did a whole lot of typing, this wasn't all my effort. This was a collaborative effort with some very talented people, people that were very concerned about making sure that although this was a good product and what we were proposing was good, we had to be thorough and we had to protect the citizens on both sides of the issue. I have to acknowledge the City Attorney's Office, Ms. Soraya Kelly, for her insight. She worked diligently with me. I was always picked up the phone to make sure that I could ask a question when it came to actual policy and procedure. That's an overview of the changes that we made at your direction back in June, and I'm ready for any questions if you have them.
I'm really glad that you went through this process because I think it's more robust and it's I think it's what we need. The ECIU may still have some concerns, but I think I'm pretty satisfied that we've met the majority of them. And so for my purposes, I think this is sufficient. And so thank you so much because I know all the work that went into this.
Thank you.
Yeah, again, I think it's I agree with the board president. We've really done a lot of great work in here. I just a couple of small points on the security policy, chain of custody for retained material. I just have a question about the record retention. I understand that you want to retain footage related to emergent incidents if it captures unusual occurrences, things like that. I may be missing it, but the destruction of records, I think, is not really covered. So particularly if it's not related to a department response. So in Security Policy 3, this is on page 10, it should be used, edited, reviewed, approved for internal dissemination within 60 days. Or what? So if you have material that's not related to an emergent incident, I would suggest we say, or it will be destroyed, or at least be clear that it's what the retention policy is on that.
Well, and that's why we worded it that way, Commissioner. That we spoke specifically about dissemination, how we would use it. Because of legal issues, and obviously Ms. Kelly can comment on that more specifically. We can't just destroy it. The public records, the city's retention policy on recorded material in the administrative code put some limitations on us just simply destroying it. We do have to retain that information, and that's why we made the language that way, and we didn't talk about destroying anything.
Okay, so that's okay. I understand that, but it also doesn't say who the custodian of those records will be, because it just says, or I could be reading it incorrectly, but the way I'm reading it, it looks like it says the official custodian of records for anything related to a department response is Section Commander Arson Counterterrorism Section. But if it's not related to department response, is that still the custodian of record? Is that what this means?
So
that may be what you wrote here. I may just not be understanding it right.
So in Section 1 under chain of custody, it does
okay, so that's number 2.
Speak to the section commander. They are currently our custodian of records.
No matter what.
No matter what.
For all materials.
All materials.
Okay.
And are our for subpoenas for department members to appear in court. They are the body that is responsible for processing that. Anytime LAPD or any entity wants to speak to our members, they officially have to go through the custodian of records, and that's Arson Counterterrorism Section. And that was just the natural fit for this type of information as we retain it.
So they will hold. So just to make sure I understand, we take some footage. It turns out it's of a training event, and random public happened to walk through while we were doing our training event. That material will then be held by custodian of record. Our CLO / training department might say, hey, I would love to see the training video because we think there could be something useful in there. Then they would go through it, make sure everything was in policy and that we weren't including folks who were members of the public in any of our video. And then they could use that, and anything else that they didn't use would remain in the custody of the section commander, who would not release it except based on the policy detailed in this document. Is that correct?
Well, part.
Okay.
So if I could explain, if we're responding to an incident, so anything that is incident response related.
I'm talking about non-incident response related.
So
Yeah.
number 4 kind of relates to that. That anything recorded not related to a department response, a planned department training event, public relations event, or involve non-department personnel in a public space or around public property or domain shall be edited, produced, and reviewed and approved by the community liaison office. That initial, however, that the retention of that will still go through our custodian of records, which will be the arts and counterterrorism section. So under all cases, with the exception of when we film things on our property, and that's also listed in the policy as well, our drill towers, our specific training sites, where we don't typically allow the public into anyway, that stuff we won't have to go through that process because it's specifically for the purpose of training. It's not inherently, inadvertently going to capture members of the public unless they are people that we have already approved to be there.
Okay, so then we're talking about number 4. It talks about the public relations events in public space. So how would that happen? How would we have footage of public space, public events involving non-departmental personnel?
The Frank Hopkins Training Center is a public space.
Okay.
The outside grounds are a public space. If we film the 9/11 ceremony, that's a public space, but it is still our property.
I see.
So anyone that would come onto that property, there could be passerbys, but in general, people are coming because we invited them to that. And there's no difference between me setting up a camera to film because I'm not using any special device to capture anyone. I'm not using infrared or thermal. I'm just capturing video or still photo the same way I would with someone standing with a tripod and a regular video camera.
Got it. If we were doing an event like that, would we notice to people that there's filming going on there, or do we not need to do that because it's a public event, or is that?
Well, Councilman, this is the beginning of our process. And we intend for this to be an integral part of the fire department. This is not going to be the last time that we talk about the UAS, and our intention is to have it on our public-facing website. People are going to see, anytime we fly, we'll be attached to an incident number.
Yeah.
So people can say, well, I saw a red, white, and gray UAV. Was that yours? Absolutely. And this is the incident that it was attached to on this time, this date. So we're going to be very transparent about when we fly, how we fly, and the purpose of what we're doing.
Yeah.
If I can just interject, and we don't do that now when people come to the 9/11 event.
Correct.
It's filmed and you're photographed there, and we don't give any notices. So
That's totally fine. I'm not saying we should. It was just a question. Is if that's something that we do, if we don't do it, then that's okay.
That's not
I'm
our
just asking the
current policy.
question.
No, it's
okay.
So the only thing I kind of want to caution you is that it is new technology, and we do want to be careful about it, but we also don't want to make it more complicated than it should be, because there's already a lot of protections that are built in, especially when you're when you're in a public setting. It's different than if you're in a private setting. So
Absolutely.
let's not sort of get to create more restrictions for ourselves than the law already sort of provides.
Look, I'm not creating anything. I'm just asking the question as what the plans are. I think this is a sensitive topic, and so I just want to make sure that we understand what we're doing. And it sounds like we do, but I think it's worth asking a couple of questions about it. So that's fine. I understand. I agree. I don't think if we normally are filming at a location, I agree. I don't necessarily think we need to change what we do. It's just a question. On the and just to be clear, this policy specifically prohibits us from. We couldn't, for example, go to Fleet Week and put our drone up in the air because we had department personnel around there if there's no emergency response happening. Is that correct?
No, we can.
We can do that.
It's an official LAFD event. We can.
Okay.
But remember, we're going to be operating under a certificate of authorization as well. So we're going to be prohibited by what that allows also. And that is what we're moving toward. The initial presentation back in June was to put us in a position where we were eligible to apply for a COA. And so we're still in that process right now. And so there are some restrictions that the FAA puts on us when, where, how, the altitudes and things like that we can fly. And we're going to be responsible for flying under those parameters as well.
Sorry. Okay. So I just thought that we would only. I thought the policy was, again, it's a lot in here, so I'm asking the questions. But the policy was specifically we would use it on departmental property for training or public events that might happen on our property, or for emergency events or emergency incidents that were happening. But that's not the restriction that's in here.
No. We're using it if the incident commander, if the South Bureau office sees some benefit in using it, then the pilot will come out, assess the situation based on the restrictions of the COA, and can fly it. It will be bound by FAA rules, but by policy, no, we're not going to say, well, we can't fly just because it's a public event. And there's nothing in here that restricts us from doing that.
And so we wouldn't need any sort of emergency reason to do that.
No, not under the wording of the COA that we'll have.
Okay, so really the only restriction here is that we can't use this for law enforcement.
We will not, correct.
No surveillance, because it's not part of our mission.
Well, yeah, if I want to speak specifically, we will not be using it for surveillance. We will not be using it to data mine, gathering metadata for identification of any particular people. But we do have incidences where we mailed with law enforcement, where we are in a unified command with law enforcement, and it may be a tool used for our protection. And remember, the primary purpose of our UAS is to provide us in the immediate with real-time situational awareness that allows us to better protect our members who are serving the public. And there may be times where we may be working with law enforcement to do that, but we will not be giving the information specifically to law enforcement for surveillance purposes. We will not fly it to run a surveillance mission for law enforcement. We will not.
And if they want our data, they can get, or the footage, they can get a subpoena, but we're not going to turn it over.
Right. Okay. I think we ought to be careful about flying a drone over a public event without good reason that related to an emergency operation. I think people will be sensitive to that. Even if our intentions are the best, I just think we should be careful about, if we're just because it looks cool. I just think we shouldn't do it. Until it becomes a little more normalized, I think we open ourselves up for problems for not using it for things that are really specifically related to a training or an emergency situation.
If I can add on that point, I want to assure you that what Chief Fields shared with us is correct. The real purpose, 99.9% of the time, is for emergency incidents, to get real-time situational awareness, to allow the incident commander to make good tactical decisions to keep our firefighters safe. The scenario about down on the Fleet Week, I think that's just we're looking at the outlier. What if that is not our main intent? We would not approve that right now, maybe down the road, but our number one priority is firefighter safety at emergency incidents.
Okay. Do we need to change any language about the independent assessor here, or are we covered on that?
No, I think you need to change.
Okay, so there's a proposed language change on the independent assessor based on what, in order to ensure that it's consistent with the charter. So, so we want to add in.
So it would be my recommendation to redact out that clause that says if so directed by the board,
Okay.
and replace it with the language I've provided.
Okay, so what page are we looking at?
We're looking at
That's page 12.
Yeah, on the paragraph headed up titled Independent Assessor.
Mm-hmm.
So we are eliminating. I'm proposing that we eliminate the words "if so directed by the board,"
Correct.
and replacing that with the words "consistent with the role of the independent assessor as set forth in the charter."
That's correct.
And then of reviewing the departments? That's what.
And everything else remains the same.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, so that's in the third paragraph of page 12.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So do we have a motion? Do we have more questions, or can we just move?
Okay, so move to adopt the report as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So then, moving on to 5A is a report by the department on the Los Angeles Fire Department Recruit Training Academy overview.
Good morning, Madam President, Chief Terrazas, City Attorney Isela, Richard Rideout, Deputy Chief, Training and Support Bureau. The Board Report Los Angeles Fire Department Recruit Training Academy overview was submitted as directed by the Commission. It reflects the requested data and analysis from the time a recruit enters the Academy through the end of probation. Included in the report are tables, pie charts, timelines, along with gender and ethnicity retention rates, which are specific to the data parameters requested. The parameters include new hires, graduates, and those that have completed probation. It is important to note that the timeline to obtain a full data set for one academy class takes approximately 1 year and 5 months for the data to mature. I will just go through a few highlights and then provide a briefing on the action plan along with a few of our identified performance targets. So just kind of bear with me. The in status section includes all data fields that were requested from new hires through completed probation. These were 6 academy classes that met this requirement. 81% of the academy retention rate was at graduation. The probationary retention rate was at 98%, which is truly an incredible benchmark. In fact, out of 262 academy graduates, there were only 4 probationary firefighters that did not complete probation. The academy can be considered even more successful in that the reasons they did not complete their probation was not due to their performance, but due to other personal issues. This is a clear indicator that when a recruit graduates from the academy, they are truly prepared and ready for the rigors and demands of the firefighter position in the field. It should also be noted that all female probationary firefighters successfully completed probation, which is a 100% retention rate. The academy instructors and staff, they're doing truly a great job, and personally, I'm extremely proud of the work that they are doing. The ongoing status section measures 4 academy classes and includes 2 of the 3 data fields. Basically, this population of recruits have graduated the academy, but they are still progressing through their probationary period. Just a few highlights. Recruit retention was increased 3% from 81% to 84%. Female recruit retention rate improved by 5% from 57 to 62%. Native American and African American recruits were among the highest in terms of retention, with 100% and 95% respectively. The current academy section basically only includes 2 recruit classes, and they are progressing well, and they are truly in alignment with the incremental improvements demonstrated by the data presented from the previous classes. We performed an overall assessment of all 12 academy classes. In reviewing and analyzing the gender and ethnicity data, it was evident that the retention rates were lower for Asians, Filipinos, and female recruits, which can be attributed to basically a smaller sample size. Conversely, when we reviewed Caucasians and Hispanics, they were among the highest in retention rates, but have the largest sample sizes. The entire population of 12 academy classes, which we started in 2014 all the way through 2016, they have a common thread of new hires. It was evaluated, and it was concluded that the distribution of ethnicity groups in new hires increased or has become more diverse since 2014. Just to address the academy non-graduates, we completed an assessment in this area which included 10 academy classes, and it was found that the reasons a recruit does not complete the academy fall into 3 areas of measurements. There are performance, they either get injured, or there are personal reasons that they leave. It was concluded that the attrition distribution among each ethnicity group was consistent, and there was no significant impact on any one ethnicity. The research also revealed that the most challenging and impactful segment of data involved the basic portion of the academy. That's weeks 1 through 12 in relation to performance and injuries. It is conclusive that all injuries, that's 100%, that caused any recruit to not complete the academy occurred within the basic portion of the academy. Additionally, in considering female and male recruit performance, 86% of women and 92% of men were unsuccessful during the basic portion of the academy, again in weeks 1 through 12. The trend analysis basically provides a baseline of information relative to performance and injuries and provides truly a launch point for our action plan that I will discuss now. And I'd just like to say that anecdotally, we know this, that proper preparation for the academy is key for firefighter candidate success. And the conclusive evidence indicates that candidates can be better prepared in the areas of physical fitness, along with having a knowledge of tools and equipment which have direct relationships with injuries and performance. As a solution specific to injuries, the department has already augmented the Candidate Assistance Program, which many of us call CAP, with an introduction to functional movement screening, or FMS, for our firefighter candidates, which is basically a simple method to assess basic movement and reduce potential injuries. FMS is already in use at the academy, and this type of assessment in a pre-employment environment is invaluable to a comprehensive health and wellness program throughout the academy. Now, to address the other point, which is performance during the basic portion of the academy, we've implemented as a part of the CAP program a tools and equipment review. This portion of the program provides candidates with an opportunity to gain hands-on experience with our tools. Candidates will have an opportunity to feel basically turnout clothing, ladders, hose packs, the different weights, power tools, and basically learn about safety and maintenance. The targeted audience includes candidates that are currently in our LAFD hiring process. So it is important to note that each firefighter candidate enters the CAP program with different strengths and weaknesses. Attending the program assists in the largest obstacle most recruits have, which is a learning technique as they progress throughout the academy, along with gaining strength and stamina. And during the academy, trying to learn tools and equipment and gain strength is almost impossible. The lead instructors and cadre members, they all have backgrounds and national certifications to instruct, train, and coach candidates that attend the Candidate Assistance Program. They are experienced and knowledgeable in the expectations of LAFD recruits. And I truly consider our LAFD recruits and many of our members to be occupational athletes, because that's what we do on a daily basis, running up and down hills. So, additionally, as a part of the department's outreach relative to preparing firefighter candidates, there is a firefighter fitness and nutrition guides that are available electronically at joinlafd.com. The department has also partnered with the city personnel department and is developing an online platform to make the CAP workouts available to candidates that live out of state and or are unable to attend live sessions on a regular basis. So just talking about just some of our performance targets associated with the action plan, we're looking at, by this time, approximately 18 months, because it just takes us time to be able to gather that data from each class. As stated before, is to increase female firefighter retention at graduation by 5%, to increase overall recruit firefighter retention at graduation by 2%, to increase our CAP attendance by 5%, and to reduce our injury rate by 5%. These strategic choices have been selected as an organizational commitment to measure future performance against current data trends in the academy, which we have assessed. The members involved, from Training and Support Bureau to our candidate assistant program instructors, they have a unique perspective and understanding of the department's direction in regards to proper record keeping, assessments, surveys, analysis, and feedback, whereby the plan can be evaluated and improved for the future. I've been involved, I've been assigned to training probably for 11 years throughout my career, over a third. And one thing I can say with surety is that continuous improvement is the key to success for our programs. The CAP program has a unique potential to inspire young women and men to prior to the academy and contribute in reconceptualizing traditional male-dominated fields such as becoming a firefighter. It is anticipated that the action plan will be beneficial to all firefighter candidates that attend. That concludes my report. I know it took a little bit of time, but it's hard to go through 22 pages in just a couple of minutes, so I'll take any questions.
So I want to thank you because I kept asking you to go back and give me more details on these numbers. And also because I knew that once you drill down, there would be more discrepancies than we discussed at first. And so it took a lot of months. So I want to thank you for going back. It was very thorough. And, you know, it points out to some of the issues that we knew were there. So good thing that once they graduate the academy, we know that they're going to succeed because they almost always make it out of probation. But clearly there's some issues at the academy, and maybe it means that we need to work on better strategies for helping the women who go to the academy sort of make it out of the academy. But I'm glad that you're looking into that, and it looks like you're putting together a strategy for that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, we are.
But I do want to ask you, because you said it was a small sample size of women and Asians, that sort of Asian Americans, that made it so that the numbers are a little bit skewed. But you also have small numbers of African Americans comparatively. And those numbers, you had almost 100% make it out of the academy. So you do have other discrepancies that you kind of, and I'm not saying that we know what the reason is, and I didn't ask you to come here with reasons. It's just I wanted this report because I wanted us to sort of know where the issues are and, you know, what we need to work on.
Absolutely. The stakeholders actually work together. That's UFLAC, the Stentorians, and the Women in the Fire Service, and they provide tutorials to those. So we haven't actually seen the numbers as of yet, but they do coach them along the way and mentor several of the candidates that are in the process.
Okay.
It just takes a while to get the data. It just takes the academy is 5 months, and they have a year probation. So.
And with the small sample size, I do think that we want to wait till we have like more numbers, because it also sort of protects the anonymity of people. Because if you have 2 women in one class, it becomes really easy to sort of identify who you're talking about in these public reports. So I think you're doing it the right way and sort of waiting.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay.
I commend you for the report and breaking it down, because some of the things that I had asked for and wanted are here. I would further like for you to, if you do this again or at some point somewhere, to see how the different academies break down as far as the fallouts, the graduates and the ones not graduating. So if I were looking at, I can't tell if this was 40s or 81.
Okay.
I just know that.
So you want to break it up by
So I'd like to see it broken up by academies also, to see which ones had the dropouts, or I would just like to see it by academies.
Sure.
Just the same report. But I thought that the report provided a lot of information, and that it's interesting to see that sometimes the numbers, the percentage at the bottom may look really good, but then if you look at the raw numbers, it's higher in some areas. But I can discuss that with you, and we can talk about it. You can probably explain to me why it looks that way to me.
Okay, absolutely, anytime.
Hi. Thank you so much for this report. I do appreciate the efforts the department is putting forth, and I'm going to thank the department for really focusing on this and making it a priority. You know, I do see improvement, but I do have a couple questions as far as I was a little concerned when I saw, if you could go to page 15, can you explain the chart? And I need some clarification on that. Is the injury rate, you have 5 females injured and 8 males injured?
Yes.
But if females are only less than 6%, and they're getting injured at about 2.3% times, 2.3 times the
More.
rate of men. Yeah.
Right.
So that's pretty significant, and I don't know if you've kind of distilled that down or if you have information on that.
Yes, we do. We can we can meet separately. We can provide you with all the numbers. But what I wanted to do, it would have made the report actually a lot longer. But I wanted to be consistent, so I use everything in the aggregate from the request.
Okay, yeah. So I know you're putting everything in the aggregate.
Yes.
And maybe we can meet outside and we'll just sit down and discuss why that rate is so high. And there's also, you have here under performance total.
Which page are you on?
Here, page 15. You have 8 dropped out for performance, and that was 8% of the total. So is that just 8% of all the men and women?
That's yes. That's
Okay.
8% of the aggregate. Yes.
All right.
Is there only 100 people?
No, it has 97. 97, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we wanted to provide. I wanted to provide you with a lot of information on attrition. That's why we did it by we did it by gender, attrition by gender and reason, by ethnicity, and by reason alone. I mean, we
Right.
could have sliced it up a lot of different ways, but these were the ones that seemed to impact the program the most.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I was just confused by that table. But what does strike me was that we're 2.3 times the amount of injuries for females compared to men. So I think that we should probably look into that. Do you do exit surveys of those that leave the academy?
Yes, we always do.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
Do you have that information?
We do. Yeah, we do exit interviews before every recruit either resigns or is terminated.
Excellent. Is it possible to get that information?
Yes, absolutely. We have it.
Yeah. That would be great
It would
then.
be out of Chief Jones's office, but yes, we can get it for you.
Okay,
Mhm.
excellent. I think it might be helpful to help us figure out exactly where these
They're-
people are falling out.
They're very confidential because they're personnel records, so
Right.
it's not something we would discuss in commission.
Okay,
But
that's
you're a commissioner, so you could have access to it.
yeah, and that's fine. What I care about is things don't need to be public. I just want to make sure that we're addressing, that we know what the problems are and that we get to address them. So that's all I'm asking for. And but I mean, the numbers are good. Like, if you look at other departments, I get that you guys are doing a good job. I just want to see that we spend a lot of time, focusing on this, and I want to make sure that we're yielding the most out of what we're doing. So I think that, figuring that out, I think that you've done, like I said, you also have a plan in here for, you brought this up on page 21. Do you have plans for how to implement the bullet points that you have written out there?
Those are already implemented. Those are things that have already happened. That was just a reiteration. We went through a complete revamp of the entire training academy. That's how I was involved in that process, and we did a detailed analysis in 2006 during the controller's audit also. So I had to basically answer for that, and we redesigned the entire curriculum in the academy.
In 2006?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That maybe Because you have here improve the training environment for recruit firefighters.
Always. Everything is
Is there a
continuous
plan from
improvement.
going on?
When we're looking at all those points, it's always continuous improvement on what we can do next time. So after each academy, we have a hot wash with the academy staff and find out what we can do better next time. So, but these are basically the core items that we look at all the time.
Okay, so you're saying this is
Yes.
ongoing performance standards that
Yes.
you're always categories that
We're
you're
always looking at these areas.
Do you have like any way to? Is there a way that you can like get that data and consolidate, like get it in a report so we can see how it's grown?
You mean like the measure I use is basically our
The risk factor.
our rate in the field as far as our success rates. Because if the training academy was not performing up to standard, then we would have a lot more terminations in the field. We're at 98%, over 98%.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the academy is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. We lived through a time wherein we didn't have faith in the academy, and that's what the controller's audit was about. And so we're functioning actually at a very high level, probably a little bit higher than I thought that we could get to, but we've seen some great successes in the academy. The academy is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I don't want to go backwards and start undoing things, but we always look at these about 8 or 9 areas for continuous improvement. And that's why I make my performance targets a little bit smaller or a little bit less when it comes to retention, because we're already at 98%.
Right.
And so to squeeze out another, I don't know, what is that, a 0.5 or a percentage is going to be difficult.
Right. No. Yeah. Just concerned about the academy, the first. But I do like the front end, the CAP program that you're doing. I think that that's essential. I think that what we've also seen is the Stentorians have been extraordinarily successful in their efforts, and I do want to thank them, for and opening that up to all candidates. Their work and mentorship has been, I mean, you can see the results.
Yes.
And I think I think if there's a way that we can apply that to
Other groups.
And that's
groups would be
a part of it. We're already doing that. They're already inviting other people to their program to assist.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I attended the Stentorians program, everybody was there.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
it was great.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have the measurements right now. We've already implemented the program. They're already there, but I won't see it until they actually get in the academy and actually graduate. So I can't actually report on it. I can tell you I'm doing it, but I can't report what the numbers will be.
Okay, excellent. And you're going to be reporting back. Is this an ongoing report?
I think it should be.
I think so too.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but it takes you a while to gather all the data, so you won't have more good data for like 6 months.
Probably a lot longer than that. If you look through your report, that's why I provided there are some tables that has probationary end dates. Some are in 2019. They're multi-layered target dates. So it's
I think you've got one.
it'll just be a smaller size. That's all.
Yeah, you have some probation end dates. You have 2 coming up in October and November.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like end of the year.
But it's not going to change the overall data that much. I mean,
I don't think it's going to change it that much. We need a little bit more time.
Yeah, and then a class is graduating. When is this class? Next.
9/14, next Thursday.
Yes, and you said there's it's pretty diverse. So.
Very diverse. We have
Good.
we're equaling our largest graduation of female recruits in history.
Wait, what?
Of the department. Yes, we are.
This is the largest? How many is it?
5.
Did we have
We're
five
matching.
before? Tied.
Yeah.
Second largest. Yeah. No, that's great. Also, one other question is, are there any other departments that are overseen by the CAL FIRE academies? Are there any other academies that are overseen by your oversight body that have numbers that are similar to ours or better for diversity?
What do you mean?
Our academies are overseen. They're certified by
By the state of California.
State of California.
Right. That's accreditation through the state.
Are there any other agencies or academies? Have you looked at their numbers and
Yes,
how
we
we
have.
relate to them? And are there any that are better than our numbers, or are we the best out of all of them? It's good to know.
We're by far the best out of many, except for when you're looking at the specific model that we're using. They'll utilize, like, say, a single function paramedics. So their numbers are obviously higher, but the way that we are performing in our model as far as training, no, we're the best by far. And yes, we
For our model.
yes,
Okay.
for our model, yes.
Excellent.
We looked at we did a lot of a pretty good assessment and analysis. We looked at fire departments in the South. We looked at Texas, Florida, LA County. The chief mentioned that this morning. They're looking at us also on how we're doing things. So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
When people are hurt, are they, when they're well or and willing to, do they come back into the training program?
yes, ma'am. Yes. They are able to come into a maximum of one training academy. You get 2 training opportunities,
Oh, okay.
whether it's performance or injuries.
Oh, that's good. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. So, do I have a motion?
Move to adopt the recommendation for item, this is 5A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So 5B is report by the department. So on the audit of Los Angeles Fire Department, cases closed on the complaint tracking system. So it's a report by the independent assessor.
Morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
Sue Stengel, independent assessor. You have for your consideration an audit of the Los Angeles Fire Department cases closed in the complaint tracking system during first quarter 2017. All of the cases in this audit were filed between January 1, 2016 and March 24, 2017, except for 2 which were filed in 2015. The purpose of the audit was to present a snapshot of complaints against LAFD members. We highlighted the number and types of complaints, whether cases were assigned to PSD or the member's chain of command for investigation, the bureau or division to which subjects were assigned, the length of time to investigate and close complaints, statistics related to adjudications, whether the complainant was an LAFD employee or not, and the number of cases that were not investigated within the statute of limitations. In the attachment, we summarized all the case allegations to give you an idea about the nature of allegations made against department members. We identified trends and made recommendations for improving the way complaints are handled, and I'm happy to address any questions that you may have.
I thought this was a really good report. I appreciate the recommendations in here. I think it shows we are making progress as a department on how we're using CTS and how we're logging complaints. I think it's actually progress that we are getting down to some of the nitty-gritty stuff about how many complaints we have in the system and how we're logging them. And we're while we still have an out of statute, we should have 0 cases going out of statute. Certainly, it is far better than where we were before. So, I'm pleased that we're getting down to the point of actually saying this is where we need to focus the efforts on creating the written policies, and I appreciate your efforts in actually isolating those things in there. So I think it's progress. I don't have too many questions about it other than how quickly we would want to get a response back from the department on it. But
I can comment to that. I've already talked to Chief Gutierrez. I've talked to our independent assessor about it while she was compiling this report, and we all agree with the recommendations, and we are currently implementing them.
Okay, good. And I just want to echo Commissioner Glazer's comments that it was very thorough, and it also gives us a good idea of some of the places where we're still not being consistent and how we basically categorize. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that how you would say it? So it's a work in progress for the department, and I think we're getting better at it. And I agree with your recommendations.
So what is a time frame that makes sense for a response on some of these items?
We'll get back to you in 90 days.
Okay, so that will be that'll be a response, but that will actually include the specific written guidelines. I know that can be a pretty time-consuming process, creating written guidelines. Is that going to be sufficient time to create those written guidelines for PSD?
We'll do on all three recommendations at 90 days. We'll give you our progress. Some will be done. Some will be still in progress.
Take a little longer. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Move to adopt the recommendation for item 5B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And 5C is a report by the department on the non-sprinklered residential high-rise action plan.
All right, good morning to the board. Fire Chief Terrazas, City Attorney Vasella. I'm Patrick Hayden. I am the battalion chief, section commander, that is, over our commercial industrial section. What we've done here is we've looked at our non-sprinklered residential high-rise action plan. This is in relation to the idea that we've had multiple fires recently, both here and abroad, that have caused fatalities. We can't afford to have something similar occur here in the city of Los Angeles. We've had dynamic fires that have occurred in London as well as in Honolulu. So in response to these most recent incidents, we did have an opportunity, the Fire Prevention Bureau that is, have an opportunity to speak with Fire Chief Terrazas, and we came up with what we felt was an aggressive plan to address the most urgent need. And that need included the idea that we needed to further educate the tenants as well as the property owners of these buildings to ensure that they had a better understanding of the risk associated with the high-rise buildings. Having worked in the downtown area for many years, I can tell you that this has been an ongoing issue and concern for many of the firefighters. From an emergency response standpoint, we have to be well aware of these buildings. But that's not always necessarily the case, and it really surprised me to hear that many of these tenants spoke from Honolulu how they were unaware that their buildings did not have sprinklers. So one of the action plans is to include a very aggressive campaign to make sure that all individuals that are tenants within these buildings are informed and that there is a robust evacuation plan in place. But more importantly, what we'd like to do is implement ordinance that would allow for City Council to vote on the idea that we need to have an aggressive plan to ensure that these 55 unsprinklered or non-sprinklered buildings in the city of Los Angeles start a process by which they do become sprinklered. Having sprinklers is arguably, outside of fire department direct involvement, the best way to ensure that lives are protected and property is protected. So with that, we'd like to make sure that we start the process by which we have an ordinance in place. We do have current language on the books that relates to our commercial buildings. We'd like to use that same language and make sure it's associated with our residential buildings. We've also looked at the potential cost association. We've also looked at how this could be implemented over a period of time. We recognize that this could become a very significant cost for those condominium owners, as an example, who may be on fixed incomes. Many of these buildings have elderly, either on fixed incomes or the idea that they're just not prepared to handle a $6,000 per unit assessment for sprinklers. We're looking at an estimated average per building of about $1.6 million for a 16-story high-rise building. Again, $6,000 of that would be the portion that we average could potentially impact each individual unit. But what we are also looking at is the idea that within the city of Los Angeles, since 1979, we have had 6 fatalities in these non-sprinklered buildings. And again, recognizing that abroad we've had some more recent fires where there have been fatalities, 3 of which occurred in Honolulu, and 1 of which was an elderly individual. We're just at a point where we really need to take this seriously and consider what will happen if, in fact, we don't start to address these issues. And I could go on and on. I can give you statistical information with regard to the violations that are currently in these buildings. With that, we have about 26 non-compliant buildings. We have 7 that are pending legal packets being sent over to our city attorney's office. So we're looking at almost 50% of these buildings have some level of non-compliance issues within the buildings. That's a significant number. What I would like to see occur today is that we work with the city attorney, we work with building and safety, we come up with very specific language either already on the books or language related to these buildings in particular, which would help us to move this on to City Council and provide an opportunity to address a significant fire life safety issue, not only to the civilians and the tenants, the workers in these buildings, as well as obviously our firefighters. If gone unchecked, when these firefighters arrive on scene, they face a significant safety issue. This is a high resource generator, very dynamic, and immediately will become a media lightning rod, so to speak. So when you look at all the factors involved, it's time for us to have the will and the determination to really start to look at a plan over years, whereby perhaps over a 3-year period of time, which is spelled out in the board report, whereby we can actually start the process of making sure that we render these buildings as safe as possible. Sorry, I was at a tournament over the weekend, and my voice is a little shaky.
So how do you define high-rises again?
These buildings, well, there's several classifications. For the point of our discussion, where anything over 150 feet is considered a high-rise building.
So it's not necessarily the number of floors?
Not necessarily considered based on the number of floors. What we did look at here is a 16-story high-rise building, and we averaged everything based on 16 stories.
And so the ones that are not sprinklered are they're older, right? Is that
correct? Yes,
because
they fell under an exempt status over a period of time. There were different eras of high-rise buildings. Everything after 1974, we have what would be considered state-of-the-art sprinkler systems and fire warning systems inside of those buildings. Prior to that, they fall in a range, a spectrum, if you will, of various fire protective warning systems. These particular buildings, because they were residential and the fact that there was an exorbitant amount of costs associated with the individual tenant owners, they were exempted. Well, that exemption has gone on for quite some time. And so we're now at a point where we recognize that if we don't address this, that normalization can only last for so long before we have a very significant incident in one of these buildings.
Okay, so I completely concur with your concern and your recommendations. But I am concerned that it's 1.6 million is your estimated cost, right, for a 16-story. Is that average? Is that why you use 16?
Yeah, we use that as an average. We did a little bit of both pulling from empirical data as well as actual data, and we tried to determine exactly what we could be looking at on the high end. Now, you have to also recognize that a lot of these buildings may or may not need asbestos abatement. Based on how much asbestos may or may not be in the building, that number could either go up a little bit or potentially go down quite a bit. We also have to recognize and acknowledge that these owners, those that are, with the exception of the individual condominium owners, they're in a profit-driven business.
Right.
So they've had an opportunity over many years to reap the profit.
Yes, but a lot of these are residential, so there are going to be some condo owners.
There'll be deferment of costs, obviously, to the individual tenants, and that
Right.
was of concern to us, and we're not just sort of glazing over that issue, no pun intended, sir. But what we do want to also address and identify is that if one life is lost,
Yeah.
And, you know, it becomes a moot point to really, or a mute point rather, to discuss the cost association.
So I concur with the recommendations, but I do think that we're going to get a lot of pushback from residents.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
think that's part of the, excuse me, Chief, that's partly the reason why it has remained an exempt status for so long. I think that if we look at this over a period of years in time to absorb the cost and to be realistic in our approach, we may be able to move the needle towards having a safer city.
I'd like to add on to his comments. Number one, I applaud the Fire Prevention Bureau for being forward-thinking. That's our standard now. With the Oakland Ghost Fire, we made some adjustments. We did a citywide survey. We trained up on that. And then when we had the London high-rise, that was an external cladding issue. We researched that, and we found that that product is illegal in the United States, so we were comfortable with that. When we had the Honolulu high-rise fire, we looked into that, and we're very proactive. The things we could do, we did immediately. We're sending out a letter to the 55 buildings built between 1943 and 1974, residential high-rise that are not sprinklered. And we reminded them of all the requirements. We also ensured with our Brycer system that all 55 had their Reg 4 testing done. And that's what the chief alluded to. Some of those may not have had something checked or don't have a sign or whatever the case may be. I've had discussions with elected officials. We're in support of this. And Madam President, you're accurate in your assessment that the big pushback will be the cost per unit. In Honolulu, there's a large number of these, over 300 of these types of buildings as compared to our 55. And the number one reason that they're opposed to it, in spite of the loss of life, is the cost per unit because they're elderly on a fixed income. So we're working with council and building safety, and I think the key here is to figure out a way, a funding mechanism that low interest loans that can be repaid over multiple years, similar to the earthquake retrofit program. So we're gonna make a good effort on this issue, and at the end of the day, we'll see where it goes, but we'll never stop pushing for protecting lives.
Thank you, Chief. Everything that the Chief has just indicated is in the board report. We have considered the idea that we need to have innovative ways by which we can help these individuals to finance this exorbitant cost. This is a significant request. Mm-hmm. However, you know, when you look at what's at stake, you know, a firefighter loss or, you know, a civilian loss, the stakes are just way too high for us not to really consider how we can implement this and maybe have a phased approach in terms of how we really address this issue. So again, we do have some innovative ideas and suggestions, recommendations with regard to the financing here. We do have a significant amount of city council support for this. Council member Koretz was one of the orchestrators for us to begin the process of putting forth ordinance language with regard to this issue. So the support is out there. I think it's high time that we really start to take a significant look at how we're going to address this issue. Again, it's just a matter of time. It's not something that I'd like to sort of look at from a doomsday perspective. But again, the business we're in is really being realistic in terms of where our fire life safety liabilities may lie. And this is a significant issue when you're talking about 55 non-sprinklered high-rise buildings in the city of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If I could just recognize the fact in the meantime, the best thing we can do while we're waiting for this is to stay on top of our inspections, which I'm pleased to see that you guys are doing.
Yes, sir. May I respond to that?
Yeah.
Thank you. We did put together a very comprehensive spreadsheet, and I think Captain Ryan Jones, who's in the back, if you could raise your hand, please, who really took the lead in terms of making sure that every aspect of how we could begin to look at, from a data standpoint, these buildings, we did. We looked at how many fatalities have already occurred in these buildings. Clearly, I've addressed a lot of the issues we've already looked at, as well as the idea that we broke these down into council districts as well. So this falls across all council lines. There's a significant amount of interest with regard to all council members have some of these buildings. I shouldn't say all, many have some of these buildings within their council districts. And with the idea of the elderly, we're looking at the very people who will be impacted by the cost the most are the very people who will be impacted from a vulnerability standpoint the most if they were to have a fire, because clearly the elderly are most at risk in these high-rise buildings.
Okay.
All right. Move to adopt the recommendation for item 5C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So we don't have any public comment today, so.
Move to adjourn. All right, move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.